So we can go ahead and get started. So thanks for coming to our session using Wikipedia Edit-a-thons as an assessment strategy on online courses. I think a lot of you know us, but we'll just introduce ourselves to be safe. So I'm Joanna Nemeth, and I'm the Managing Librarian of Information Services here at Athabasca University Library. And Eliana?
Thank you. I'm Eliana Elkhoury. I'm an associate professor in open digital and distance education, and I focus on alternative assessment.
And do you want to start with renewable assessments?
Yes. So I just wanted to start by saying that the idea for this webinar today and this session was based on renewable assessment, which is a form of assessment that adds value to the word. So it's an assessment that stays outside the classroom, and it doesn't just go away by the end of the course that we are teaching. And this is where the idea of an edit-a-thon related to Wikipedia came out. There's more than one things that can be done, and today we're going to provide an introduction and how we envision that edit-a-thons can be used in online spaces and in synchronous and asynchronous courses. Can you? So yes, the idea is renewable assessment versus disposable assessments. And I've had a few conversations with students asking them about like some of the most meaningful assessments that they've done or the assessment that they were the most engaged with. And some of the answers were related to this idea of renewable assessments of, like, for example, creating a Wikipedia page or making a YouTube video, things that are saying out there that other people can see them other than the instructor. So here I'm highlighting the terms in case you are familiar with them or not. So there's the renewable assessment. So they stay there, other people can see them, other people can modify them. And the disposable ones, for example, a student writes an essay and then they get a grade, or they do an exam and then they get a grade and then they move on. That's the difference here. And what is significant here is we are looking at our students as cognitive resources. They are content creators, they are active producers, they are course collaborators. So the role of the student is changing, and I think this is also relevant when we are talking about generative AI and when we are discussing this new type of information and skills and knowledge that our students need. And some of them we don't even know what they are going to use once they graduate. So this is a different way of approaching the student's role in our classrooms and even the assessment role in our classrooms. So as we move through this session, please keep in mind that our students are not only receiving the information or receiving the content. We want them to become content creators with us. We want them to become course collaborators. Thank you. And as I mentioned before, renewable assessments can take multiple forms. Some of them are learning objects, like there's an example in physics where the instructor asks the students to create learning objects. So take a concept or take an idea or a formula or something in physics and then create learning objects for other students about it. And then that instructor put Creative Commons license on these learning objects and put them online for other students to learn from. Other examples are open book. There's one from UBC where students contributed to creating an open textbook for the course. And there's an example on collaboration with community. So one university collaborated with a center in the community, and then the students were creating these renewable assessments. So they were beyond the classroom. I'm putting this here to say that there's a lot of things that can be done in renewable assessments, and this is beyond just one session, but today we are going to focus on an edit-a-thon. Yes, go ahead, Joanna.
Okay, so first I was just kind of curious to gauge how much experience you all have with having Wikipedia in your courses as assignments. So I have this Mentimeter here, so there's a link to it there, and you should be able to vote just to get an idea. Give you a minute to do that. And you can also just write in the chat if you don't want to open up a separate window or whatever, if you're on your phone. My webinar on Tuesday, one of my attendees was on their phone for the whole session. I was like, wow. She was driving. I notice sometimes it doesn't reload on the slide like it should, but there we go. Okay, so we've got someone who's done it before, someone who would like to, and I think the assessment piece is like all the reading I've done, there's very little on the assessment component, so I thought that was a really important component for Eliana to bring in. Not sure if I want to be doing it and do not want to use it. We'll have good discussions at the end. Okay. So next, I'm just going to go into a little course I made in RISE. I'll send you guys all the link for that. And then we can kind of follow along from there. I was hoping this could be like a reusable resource in the future, and we'll be able to add Eliana's alternative assessment components to it eventually as well. Okay. So the first thing we want to talk about is that there's kind of two different, we started out by being like edit-a-thons, and there's kind of there's a large difference, I guess, between edit-a-thons and Wikipedia assignments. So I'm going to kind of talk about both, but the big difference is that edit-a-thons are usually over a period of time, and they're usually optional, whereas assignments obviously are part of the coursework that you need to do to complete a course. And this all came about because we were talking about doing a AU-based edit-a-thon on AU. So edit-a-thons can take part, they can be online or in person, and they can be synchronous or asynchronous. I've got a couple examples down here. For instance, an asynchronous one is this one, which is one librarian, one reference, where they're trying to get librarians to go into Wikipedia and add references. And that was taking place over the course of a month. And they're usually on topics that they want to get more information onto Wikipedia about, and I'll get more into like the biased background of Wikipedia, but you know, this is often, you see a lot of like women's history, women in STEM, missing voices, climate change, that kind of thing. And yes, as I said, they're often optional sessions. Hopefully they're on a topic that usually because they're optional, they're going to be on a topic everyone's interested in some way. So a couple of the examples, the first two are focusing on the gender bias, mainly in STEM on Wikipedia. And then this one is an example from the University of Newcastle, and it's on missed in history. And they have a really good YouTube video on kind of like how they did the session and what all is included in that. And then Women in Red is interesting because it's a larger wiki project, but within their wiki project, they have a whole bunch of edit-a-thons that took place. And it's mainly on reducing systemic bias. So the red part is that they're unverified, I believe. And we also have someone from Wikimedia here today, so she can always add in, and she'll have more time to talk at the end as well. And then in Wikipedia assignments, these are assignments that are based for the course, for a course. And you can do them in undergrad, grad school, or you see them in high school as well. So it's quite interesting to see. So the assignments can involve kind of a variety of topics. They can be related to the course topic, or they can be more focused on the writing and research and citation process, in which case they can kind of be on any topic if you're just proving that you can write on the topic. And they can either be like editing a full Wikipedia page, they can be creating a new Wikipedia page, which is quite a bit harder, so that's going to be a higher level assignment. Sometimes some of the examples are just submitting a draft for the instructor to then look at, and sometimes in a few of the examples, the instructors actually go in and then put, like they're the editor that then puts the student's work into Wikipedia, like publishes it. Sometimes the student will just like write in the talk page, and sometimes they'll have their own sandbox that they submit. So a few interesting ways to add it to the course. So I have a link here to 10 steps for using Wikipedia in your course. And then I've got a couple different examples that I'll just like have linked here, and we can kind of like refer back to or talk about throughout the session. But this one I thought was quite related to AU because it's an online grad level course that's delivered asynchronously. And it was on, they had to go, sorry, I just read the article. They had like a component, several components throughout the assignment. So they had to first like write a portion themselves, then they had some group work, and then it was optional to actually publish the article or not, but most students did. So there's a few really interesting ones in there. This one was an ecology course. It was an undergrad assignment, and it was very much on adding more to specific ecologist pages. And this one really focuses on the Thomas P. and Jones one, really focuses on like the peer review aspect. So that was one that I was kind of referring to earlier, where you submitted your work and then another student edits it, and then I think it gets submitted to another student that edits it or reviews it, and then the instructor approves it and publishes it. So it kind of replicates the peer review process in that way. And Wikipedia, of course, being Wikipedia, has a full list of a bunch of the school and university projects that come up. So Wikipedia kind of focuses on 5 pillars. They're fundamental principles, and I think these tie in with a lot of like why it's important to use Wikipedia. We've got online, it's an online encyclopedia. If you want to have a neutral point of view, the content's free to anyone to edit and distribute and use. Editors are supposed to treat each other with respect and civility, and Wikipedia has no firm rules. So the big areas that I found in reading more about Wikipedia were inclusive and diverse content. So according to the Wikipedia systemic bias page, Wikipedia reflects the point of view of the majority of its editors, who, if we're looking at English Wikipedia, and there will be differences between different language area Wikipedias, are white, male, educated, English-speaking, and age 15 to 49, and from a developed Christian country in the Northern Hemisphere. So that's an invitation to get more diverse voices represented through Wikipedia, whether that is adding content of those underrepresented or using your voice to diversify and edit content. So they've got a really good video that goes into more details on this, and then I've linked to all of the different systemic bias pages, essentially. Many search engines are using AI content that is notoriously unreliable. So this is because they're pulling from all parts of the internet, and large language models are trained on Wikipedia, Wikidata, and Wikimedia Commons. Therefore, it's very important to ensure the information on Wikipedia is reliable and source-backed. This also makes Wikipedia a more reliable source for basic information. When you see search box summaries using large language models, that is pulling structured data from Wikipedia and Wikimedia. So adding robust information to Wikipedia is going to improve AI-generated searches on the internet. So I've linked to a webinar here that covers a lot of the ethical implications around training data in large language models using Wikipedia, and also a New York Times Magazine's article on the same topic. And I've tried to link to, if you are an AU employee, we've got the AU library subscription link as well. Another important area is open access. So as an open university, AI is always striving to eliminate barriers to education. This includes embracing open education in every way, from open pedagogy, open education resources, and open access publishing. So Wikipedia is user-generated content made available under a CC BY 4.0 license. And adding to Wikipedia from closed sources is also a way to ensure that knowledge is shared more broadly. So that's where we can tie in our subscription articles that not everyone has access to. And I also linked out to our AAU open access to research output policies, where I got most of this stuff. So the last piece, I guess, is our scholarly communication, which is kind of what I was talking about with the assignment that involves the peer review process. So writing in Wikipedia, first and foremost, brings up the information literacy question, of course, where information comes from and how you receive it and respond to it. It's important to think about that as background, especially looking at like a lot of our undergrads that may not have interacted a lot with online information and getting our younger generations coming in. Students can feel like their projects are not contributing to a larger collection of information when they're just, submitting an assignment. So adding to Wikipedia makes a difference. People are seeing that. So it's something others will read, and it's beneficial for adult learners to be able to see that those changes. It's beneficial for everyone, but I've read that adult learners are one of the big areas. It also makes course research matter beyond just the grade and starts the process of thinking about scholarly communication and taking part in the conversation. So writing in Wikipedia teaches a different style of writing as well. Rather than arguing, interpreting, or synthesizing, you're presenting all the relevant information and from an unbiased point of view. So learners will gain personal experience with the peer review process, whether it's just having other editors come in and edit it or comment or take stuff out, or if it's going through one of these assignments where you are pseudo reviewing each other's assignments before submitting them. All right, so getting started on Wikipedia is quite a bit. So I think we have Wikimedia that can do sessions that we can get a lot more into the details, but just some of the basic info to get you a little foundation is that you want to start by making a Wikipedia account. You can edit on unregistered accounts, but it's always better to create your own account so you have more agency within there. And you also want to be intentional with your username because it can be tracked back to you. So it's good to be aware of what kind of username you're using. Something unusual is usually best. And adding an email address is good, so it's recoverable. Next up, you want to think about what you're going to edit or create. This is the same for what you want your students to edit or create. So there are specific guidelines around what you can edit. And you're going to want to start with small edits. If you go in and just start to create a new page, it's probably not going to get approved right away. And then as you're getting familiar with the mechanics and moving on to, you can move on to larger edits and it will become easier to do that. So a couple things that are good to be aware of are the conflict of interest guidelines, particularly when selecting a topic. And you should not be getting paid to edit an organization's account or page. I should say page, not account, I think. And I've got a link here to when your boss asks you to edit. And then as faculty and researchers, you also want to be careful about citing your own citations. So we've got a link out to expert editors for more information. Now, when creating a page, you're going to need to create a new Wikipedia page, and here are a few things to check first. You will want to consider who or what is missing from Wikipedia. So this is kind of the same as going in to do academic research, is like looking for the gaps. Wikipedia has very specific notability guidelines that tend to be skewed towards men and male-dominated fields. That's where the women in red topic comes in. So it's important to improve the relevance on Wikipedia. You can consider starting with a draft and then submit those to your instructor or to get students to submit those to you. And if you don't want to start as a draft, you can also start with your personal sandbox before it's published to the main encyclopedia, which is a little bit less pressure. Now, you can also go in and edit existing Wikipedia pages. This is a little bit easier because you can kind of take a look through and be like, oh, I see there's a large gap here. What topics am I interested in? Let's browse those Wikipedia pages and see what I know that is not listed here. You can also take a look at the talk page. You can see if there's requests for more citations, like not every sentence has a citation for it. And the page history to get an idea of what's been highlighted. Sometimes there's really interesting conversations going on between the editors on the page history and the talk page. The most important thing to note is that all information added to Wikipedia must be supported by a citation from a reliable resource, and I'll get into kind of what those mean because it was quite interesting and useful to read up on that. And Eliana found this really useful Wikipedia integrated outreach dashboard. So if you are wanting to create a course, there you can have a Wikipedia page that has all the information about who's editing, what's been edited. That can be articles created or edited, words added, references added. So it's quite a cool way to be able to track what's being done and the changes you're making. Okay, so sources to use. So as I said, every statement must be backed up by a reference. And the reliable references are going to be different depending on the language you're editing in. So we're talking about English once again. So the idea of what is trustworthy is going to follow the dominant culture of the language Wikipedia page you're looking at. So in this case, we're looking at verifiable information. So all the information should be verifiable and you can find a full overview of referencing on Wikipedia for beginners here. For source ratings, you can find a list of sources and their ratings on Wikipedia. So there's going to be like different news sources that are going to be higher rated than others. Open access, you don't have to use open access articles. As I was saying, it can be good to bring in academic closed articles, but it's encouraged to use open access articles. And you want to have lots of multiple points of views expressed. Original research, this is what surprised me, was that Wikipedia does not want you to be using primary sources. So you're not going to be like using archival material, that kind of thing. You can limit it, but ideally they want secondary sources. Of course, it's not a place to publish new findings, and you can't cite from other Wikipedia pages. You can link to them, but they can't be the citation. And I've got more information on how to create your own citations. Now, do we want to get into, Eliana, do you want to get into assessment first and then talk about assignments topics? Okay.
Yes, thank you. So, just to go back a little bit, I don't know if you shared this with me, but when I first started working in academia and I started teaching, there was this idea that Wikipedia articles are not reliable. And when you look at this information, there's a lot of scrutiny that goes into writing a Wikipedia article or publishing it. So, and the students are also looking in there. So that's one of the main things that come up when they are looking for information. So that kind of makes me think about the relevance of this for the students and also a way for them to practice. Let's remember that we are going to talk about this assessment type, but it doesn't have to apply to all your courses. You might find it relevant for only one course or only one topic, so keep that in mind. We're not saying remove all your assessment and just put Edit-a-thon. The second point I want to say is that when we talk about Edit-a-thon, and this is why I was drawn to that idea, is that all the students will come together virtually or sometimes face-to-face to edit one topic in a certain time. So for example, over 1 week or over one weekend or over one semester, they're only like focusing on one topic and then editing based on that topic. So having said that, I was looking at examples of how can you assess the work of your students. So let's say that you decided to do an edit-a-thon and you chose a topic and you ask your students to go in and find all the items that are related to this topic. For example, if you have environmental ethics or something like that, and you want your students to go inside Wikipedia pages and add indigenous point of views to Wikipedia pages that are related to the environment, or Canadian indigenous point of views to these environmental pages. So they are going to all go there and then start working on that topic. How are you going to assess that? How are you going to give a grade or maybe give feedback to that? And this is where I thought it would be a good idea to divide it into before they do the edits, during the edits, and after the edits. How can you assess that? So let's start with scaffolding your assessment. So the assessment, this is something that I always talk about, is a big high-stake assessment that leaves the students to the end to do whatever they think they need to do is not usually a successful one. Not successful because it doesn't help the students demonstrate their learning. So dividing it into smaller pieces is the best for the students' learning. So if you can ask the students once you have decided on your topic, you can ask your students to find the pages that they want to edit. And this requires research. It's not something that they're going to go and find the first page. They need to read the pages. They need to be critical about these pages. They need to understand what is missing and why, and then present that to you. So this could be part of the grade that you are assigning to your students, the choice of the pages and why. And also this requires that they understand the concepts that you are teaching well. So let's say, for example, I'm teaching my students on program evaluation, and let's say I'm teaching them about culturally relevant program evaluation. They need to understand what program evaluation is. They need to understand culturally relevant aspect of it, and they need to understand what is missing. So when they look at other pages, they can add this into it. You can also ask them to submit evidence of why they chose that page to edit it. So which pages did they visit? How many did they read? Which resources did they check to make sure that this page needs updating? And this is also part of the critical thinking or the evaluative thinking that we want them to think about. Like, if they are doing a topic in philosophy, if they are doing a topic in ethics of AI, and academic integrity, anything. So they're going to go read that page and they're going to check other resources. This is where we want them to extend their learning. So that also could be one part of the grade. Joanna, thank you. During the editing event, you can either, for example, use the dashboard that Joanna just showed us. So that dashboard, once the students create their accounts, you can add them to that dashboard and then it will follow them. It will see how many pages were edited and how many they edited and what they did. So that's kind of a visual, numerical approach to follow what each student's doing. And also it's good for you to see what happened during this course and provide a summary. They can use hashtags also when they are editing. And this is more of the technical part. So once you are convinced that you want to use Edit-a-thon, I am happy to sit with you and discuss these ideas, and there's technical support that you can receive. But first, now we're talking about some of the ideas out there. So another thing that they can do is students can do the edits on their local document. For example, they can copy the Wikipedia article and then put it on a Word document and then start editing there. They can track changes. That editing, they can submit it to you before they post it online. They can submit it for peer review. So that all of that can also go inside the grading. Joanna? And as I mentioned, they can do the peer assessment or the peer feedback on each other's submissions or the self-assessment. So you can give them a rubric and they can determine that. So once they did the editing and they are happy with that, or for example, you would provide them with feedback and they have to edit it again before they submit it to be online. Once they've done that, and the article is submitted on Wikipedia and it's approved, it's out there. One of the things that you can do to assess their learning is you can ask them to submit a reflection on their changes. So it goes beyond doing the changes. So they did it, they included references, they included other sources, they read 15 other pages, they read articles, so they did all of this. Then comes the reflection time, and this is where they connect it to their own learning and to their own growth. So for example, they could say that, I thought that, for example, the algorithm that was used in computer science or in social media was based on this model, but as I did more research, I discovered a different type of algorithm, and this is related to what I'm studying in this course, and these are the issues with this algorithm, and this is how we can fix it. So it's taking that in a step further and thinking about these ideas and reflecting on these ideas and making connections beyond the course. Also, you can ask them to draw connections between the changes they made and the course content. This is also important because they're not only writing for Wikipedia, they are learning theories and concepts and ideas and seminal work in your course. So how do they make that connection? That's also an element that you can grade them on. You can ask them to do a gallery walk, and I find this as interesting because you can organize an hour. It could be synchronous or asynchronous, where students either record or even present it. That say we are including Canadian Indigenous point of view to environmental studies online. Each one of them will focus on their own edits. So it's a shared space where all that knowledge is shared. They are learning from each other and they are showcasing their work. So that's also one part of the assessment. John? you can ask them to create lists of common problems that they saw. For example, when they were reading, to find that page that they wanted to change, what were the common problems that they found? And based on this, that's also critical thinking. That's also when you are reading a paragraph or you are reading an article, these common problems, they like if you are able to identify them, and if your students are able to identify them, then they have achieved part of the learning outcomes. So also submit advice for writing after doing peer review of each other's work and self-reflecting on their own. So one of the assessment criteria could be that they submit an advice for writing for each other. So they do a peer assessment or peer feedback for two other writers or two other authors in their classroom, and then they've done their own, so they can submit an advice for writing that stays with the course for another cohort. You can ask them to create exam questions based on the edit-a-thon. So they recognized common problems that were found in these articles. What questions can they ask as exam questions? And you can tell them, this is a nice approach that I see. You can tell them that I'm going to use 2 of these questions in the final exam, if you do have a final exam, or in the final essay. So these are ideas for you to use. If they faced rejections from Wikipedia and they couldn't, for example, publish or they received feedback, they can reflect on these rejections, and then also they can reflect on the process and how they contributed to Wikipedia in general. That's also one thing that I like is ungrading. So you can ask the students to grade themselves, but they need also to provide evidence of their own learning. So for example, you give them the rubric and you tell them what is the grade that you deserve, and give me evidence that you deserve, for example, A-, and the students would come and tell you that this is how I show my critical thinking. This is how I show my knowledge of the theories. This is how I show my any kind of learning outcome that you have in there. And you can have a discussion with them based on that. So always remember that when you are doing an assessment of any activity, you have to take it back to the learning outcome. So based on your learning outcome, this is how you define what your assessment is going to be. And when I did my research and I saw what people were assessing on when doing an edit-a-thon, they were doing, for example, assessment on critical thinking. And of course, assessing critical thinking is not that easy. These are items that I found in relation to critical thinking. So what can my students do? Can they raise vital questions and problems? Can they formulate them clearly and precisely? Gather and assess relevant information. Use abstract ideas to interpret effectively. So come to well-reasoned conclusions and solutions. I'm not going to read all of them, but these are items of critical thinking. And of course, when you want to do this, I'm going to show you an example of a rubric, but you are going to make the rubric your own and based on what you are wanting your students to learn. Other learning outcomes that are really interesting are information literacy. There's from Ashland University, they have a whole information guide about what is information literacy. Also, so are you teaching your students about information literacy? Are you teaching your students about digital literacy, about technical skills, about online source reliability, about content knowledge, about writing for a general audience? So all of these are learning outcomes, and some of them might fit into your course or not, but that's something to keep in mind. And when we move to the second slide, you will see there's more. I think they're cool. There's more learning outcomes that are, I think, that will come to the surface with generative AI. For example, information environmentalism, for like how to keep a healthy information ecosystem with generative AI. There's a lot out there. There's a lot of things that make sense or don't make sense. So teaching our students that that the information of keeping, the importance of keeping a healthy information system related to our field of study is also important. So this could be achieved through an edit-a-thon where they go in and they clean up and they put and they make decisions on the content. Also digital sustainability, so fighting misinformation and pollution on the web. Collaborative knowledge creation and seeking multiple perspectives. So those are also, think about them from the point of view of your own course. How can I teach my students? How important is seeking multiple perspectives is when I'm teaching my students this course? Also, open knowledge. This is something that was relevant, that came out of the when I was reading about the edit-a-thon, is that students were, especially undergrad, that they were becoming more aware of the concept of open knowledge that is free to use, reuse, and redistribute, and our responsibility towards that open knowledge. What can we do and what should we do? And this is going to be relevant more and more with all the fields as generative AI destroys everything. Joanna, if you don't mind, can you open that link of the rubric and show it to us? So this is a rubric that comes out of Wikimedia. What I would like to suggest is, if you decide to use this, please make it your own. Do not use a rubric that was made by somebody else and put it in your course without changing it. So they have elements here, and I think they're really good. So take a look at these elements and see if they work for your course. One of the things is to be aware is to not to pollute your rubric with things that are not relevant to the learning outcome that you are teaching. For example, the times of somebody clicks on the article, that's not relevant to what the students have put in that article. Also, another advice I have is, if you can get feedback from your students on this rubric, or if you can co-create a rubric with your students, that would be perfect. So involving them as partners in the learning. Of course, we have all these links available in the presentation for everybody to look at. Can we go back to the previous? So yeah, so there's elements about references, the article, the previous article, and the new article.
Do you want me on the slides right now?
On the slides, yes. That's
okay. Perfect.
Oh, okay. Here's another link that I thought was interesting. It's an action plan, and it's out University of Victoria here in Canada, and it shows week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, what the instructor should be doing with the librarian and what the students should do. So that's also another advice for you to look at, because this is a big project. This is not something that you are just going to do. So looking at this, so for example, 2 to 3 weeks before the course, preparation for the course, week 1, what you will do, week 2, and then work with the librarian, week 3, week 4. So it's dividing the whole course up until week 13. So if you decide to do this, this is also another resource that you can look at, what you would do every week to get to a successful experience that is not frustrating for you, and it's not frustrating for the students either. And back to the slides. Some of the things that I also found were interesting were, because this is an edit-a-thon and everybody is editing the same topic, asking the students to vote on the topic would be interesting, because you would get a sense of what they want. For example, you can choose 3, and then they can choose one. They can vote on which one is like more interesting. They can put them, or you can ask them to come up with ideas, and then they vote on them. And this also shows you how much they are immersed in that course, and how much thinking they can do about this course if they can really come up with an idea to create an edit-a-thon on. And also, as I mentioned before, creating the rubric as a class really engages the students and makes sure that they understand what they are assessed on. I put here a few ideas of what people have done. So in addition to ideas, I found here, like, for example, this edit-a-thon, they decided to go in and add Wikipedia pages about all the newspapers from under-resourced communities. So they found that not all the newspapers had Wikipedia pages. What they did is they went in and they created these Wikipedia pages for the under-resourced communities. And I'm not saying that this is something our students should do, but this is something that could be an idea that you can make that is related to your own course. And another one, they did this, so they did a few weeks of negotiations of what they wanted to study, and they decided to study that person, to make an edit-a-thon about this person, William Red Rees. It was what the university is. The university is named after this person. But what I found interesting is they did ask the students, because there were no Wikipedia articles about this person. So the students went into Google News archive, and they even went into, this was a physical university, so they went to the archives and they looked for like newspapers and news, and they had to read all of these and synthesize this information and put it in Wikipedia pages. And also, not only make a Wikipedia page about that person, but add the person's contributions to other parts, because it was not only one person who did one thing. He contributed to other things other than being an aesthetic program. So this is also something that can be done in your courses if you can think about a significant person, not only a significant topic. So that's also an idea for you. Translation, that one, there's no need to go to the link, that's only for you, but this was in Spanish, and they asked the students to, this was a science course, and they had to translate because they didn't find a lot of information in Spanish compared to the English ones. So they had to go and translate the pages to Spanish and add their own point of view or their own research. This was graduate students, their own research and findings to those Wikipedia pages. Was this the last page?
Yeah, so I was going to, what I was going to say is, we don't have much time now, so I think we can have kind of a conversation. Everyone can weigh in. I also started a Padlet that for some reason isn't working when I'm presenting, but I've got it open here, where you can add in information about like as you're brainstorming on your topic. So I'll send the link for that. And I was thinking we could put in kind of like course you're working on, topic ideas, and then we kind of like comment on those, but we can also just have a discussion. So
yes, if you want to post ideas, like this is a big topic, and it's usually not something that you decide to just maybe do on your own. Like if you can discuss with a colleague, I always.
Yes, thank you to the two of you. This is great information. I just have a quick question. Full disclosure, I'm the person that said I have used it. I thought the question said you have not used it. So in that Menti poll, sorry about that. The question is, this is great, but how about privacy? Because it's my understanding that, you know, if they're publishing, what if we have students that don't want their name out on a public website that's not behind firewalls in AU? So how have you dealt with that in terms of, you know, those students that really don't want to be there, or they can't because they're in a situation where they're vulnerable?
I'm gonna answer from one side. So Joanna, you're gonna answer I know you have answered to this from what I saw in your presentation, but what I'm gonna say is goes back to the principles of alternative assessment, and it's about choice. And if the students don't want to do this, there's other options that they can demonstrate their learning. So
you're
that's
providing other options. Okay.
I would recommend that, like providing other options, or asking them, like, if that option doesn't work for you, how would you like to demonstrate their learning? Maybe they're gonna create a comic book for me about what they're learning.
Okay, no, it doesn't have to be alternative assessments, universal.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I know, Joanna, you mentioned something about when they create their username, choose something that is not, that cannot be traced back to them, right?
Yeah, I think Chelsea might be able to weigh in more. I was going to say similar to you that a few of the assignments kind of gave examples of how you could have them submit like what they were going to edit without like the draft, without actually like making the Wikipedia account or editing the actual thing. They can, I think this is what I'm kind of interested in that I think Chelsea will be able to weigh in more on is like, if they don't create a user account, you can see the IP address, which is interesting. And if they do have a user account, we can't see their IP address, but presumably Wikimedia has access to the IP address. I'm not sure. So they could have like a private account, but I understand there would be some students that might not want an account at all. So that might be where having the professor go in and actually make the edits is the best case. But what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say that they can all submit to the instructor or the TA, and the TA would post it online. So that's also another way around it.
Yeah, and Chelsea, do you have more to weigh in there?
Yeah, I was going to say you're absolutely right to be concerned about privacy because there's actually been quite a few issues with volunteer editors right now who are getting doxxed by people who don't by big organizations that don't like the edits that these people are making, particularly in the US for obvious political reasons for all the things that are going on right now. So that's why when Joanna reached out to me, I was like, please make sure that you write something down about the usernames. Because if you, like for me, for example, because I have a Wikipedia account for my work, like I use my name so people can connect anything that I edit back to me. Like they could go find my LinkedIn. They probably can't find my Facebook because I have that locked down, but like you can be very, like people can go and look up your username. So even if you use the same handle across different platforms, like the same Instagram name that you use for Wikipedia, people can then find that Instagram account based on the username and like connect it to you. So you just have to be very explicit that that's a possibility, I think, with students and encourage them to use a username that they don't use for other platforms and that doesn't include their real name. So yeah, there's, in terms of IP addresses, so if you don't, like Joanna said, if you don't have like a registered account, it will show your IP address, but the foundation, like the Wikimedia Foundation that holds the servers for Wikipedia and all of the different projects, they're actually working on a tool to make temporary accounts. So if you don't have a registered account, instead of showing your IP address, it'll make you like a temporary account, and then that way people can't locate you based on your IP address. But they don't actually, the Wikimedia Foundation is very, very privacy forward. So when you edit Wikipedia, the only people who can see your IP address are people who have signed NDAs with the foundation. So that's like a very, very limited number of people, like less than 30 in the whole world. And it's for very specific purposes. Like if someone was violating the terms of service and they had like multiple accounts that they were using to harass other editors, like they could go and check and see that those different accounts have the same IP address and be like, that's the same person. We're going to block all of those accounts. But that's like a very specific scenario. Otherwise, like they don't keep track of your IP address generally. So yeah, there's levels to it. There's a lot of stuff to take into consideration, but the easiest way to, like if a student was concerned about privacy and they didn't want to make an account, that's one thing. But if they are careful about picking a username that they don't use anywhere else and doesn't include their full name, I think they would be okay.
Thank you.
I think this is a great lesson to the students because this goes under like digital literacy and like what they put out there and the information and how everything can be tracked. That's an important lesson. And I know Lorelai asked a question about can we change our username? So if we already have a username, can we change it?
So typically no. There's the process that you can go through with like you would have to request it from the administrators of English Wikipedia. And they can say yes or no, but generally I would say no. Like it's a difficult process and you kind of have to have a lot of technical information. So it's a lot easier to just start with something that can't be traced back to you.
So I know this was a lot of information. Lorelai, I saw you unmuted yourself. Did you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say this was like really interesting, and you know, I really appreciate you giving us more ideas. And I mean, it's obviously, if you're going to use it, there's a lot of work to try to figure it out, right? But yeah, thank you. This is just fabulous.
Thank you. And I wanted to mention that this is a lot of information and we were trying to narrow it down as much as possible, and we want to follow up with other sessions if there's interest. But one of the things that you can do is if you do want to use this in your assessment, feel free to reach out to myself or to Joanna. We would love to talk about this. I love assessment, you know me. And another idea is reach out to a colleague that you can discuss this with, and you can come up with the best ideas with them. So with this, Joanna, if you want to wrap up, and thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming, and thanks to Chelsea for being able to answer those questions and attending. And yeah, we can move forward and set up some further sessions. I also have been talking to the teachers at the high school, and some of them here in Athabasca, and some of them would be interested in incorporating Wikipedia into their assignments too. So we might be able to set up a larger session doing that too.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Joanna, for all your work.
Oh,
Have a
no,
good
thank
weekend.
you.